Does anyone even remember the Conservative Party? They were in government for 14 years. We had 4 Tory prime ministers in a row, but you wouldn't know it from their party conference. Or maybe you would, because the Tories are only reaping what they've sown. Either way, the scenes at conference were pretty bleak. For Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride's flagship speech, the Manchester Central Conference Hall was half empty. You can see all the unoccupied seats down the left-hand side. And Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp's speech didn't fare much better. As you can see, it's hardly rammed. But this post on X from Times political correspondent Max Kendricks really takes the biscuit. He says this: Tory conference feels empty more than anything. The members' debate on free speech has been attended by 55 people. Where are all the free speech warriors, one might ask? Well, they went to Reform Conference instead. Now, even legacy media has picked up on how poorly attended the Tory conference has been. But leader Kemi Badenoch wasn't ready to admit what we can all see with our very own eyes. Here she is on Radio 4's The Today programme.
You saw at Mel Stride's speech yesterday, there were banks of empty seats. People are saying that your leadership, that you're not bringing people with you, you're not enthusing the Conservative Party, that you haven't got the momentum and energy that you need to change things.
Well, that's not true. I looked at how many people were in my speech. It was rammed full. Yes, exactly. So you can't say
the shadow chancellor.
Yes, but you can't say that I'm not enthusing people when it's standing room only. There are queues into many of the fringe events. We have this accusation every other conference.
Let me change the question.
That people haven't turned up to the main. People haven't turned up to the main hall. It's because there's actually quite a lot going on. What is different about this conference is that because we're not
he should be a box office
what is different about this conference is that because we're not in government, a lot of the people who turn up wanting government favours are not here. They've gone to Labour conference. We used to be teaming with corporate lobbyists. Now we're teaming with party members. So yes, it is different. But let's just remember,
I don't think teaming is. It's not the right word. I haven't seen anything.
Well,
teaming.
You should have been at the pub I was in yesterday. Absolutely rammed full with young Conservatives.
Everyone needing a drink after those boring speeches in those half-empty rooms, I'm sure. Amazing thing to say, though. I'm the leader of, what was once thought of as a natural party of government. And yeah, we no longer enthuse anyone, but at least people turn out to see what gaffes I might make when I'm giving my speech. Badenoch probably didn't have a great time on the morning media round. When she wasn't being asked about the wake-like atmosphere at her party's conference, she was being asked about her Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, saying this.
I went to Handsworth in Birmingham the other day to do a video on litter. And it was absolutely appalling. It's as close as I've come to a slum in this country. But the other thing that I noticed there was that it was one of the worst integrated places that I've ever been to. In fact, in the hour and a half that I was filming with news there, I didn't see another white face. And that's not the kind of country I want to live in. I want to live in a country where people are properly integrated. It's not about the colour of your skin or your faith. Of course it isn't. But I want people to be living alongside each other, not parallel lives. That's not the right way we want to live as a country.
Jenrick made these comments about the Handsworth area of Birmingham at the Aldridge Brownhills Conservative Association dinner back in March. The audio recording was leaked to The Guardian and made public today. And his remarks have already been slammed by former Tory West Midlands Mayor Andy Street, who called Handsworth actually a very integrated place. And by the current Labour Mayor Richard Parker, who said Jenrick's comments were racist and questioned whether he should still be able to sit as a Tory MP. In that clip, he does seem to be saying something like, I can't see any white faces here. I don't want to live in a country like this. I want to live in a country more integrated. Like, does he think that integration means that people turn white? It's very unclear what is being said in that. I mean, it's racist, obviously. What people you see on the street at one given moment while you're shooting a video on litter doesn't necessarily indicate anything about the community that lives there. But Kemi Badenoch doesn't seem keen to discipline her one-time leadership rival, who some people think is still gunning for the top Tory job. She said this on BBC Breakfast.
But in and of itself, it's a factual statement. If he said he didn't see another white face, he might have been making an observation. There's nothing wrong with making observations. But what he and I both agree with is that there are not enough people integrating. There are many people who are creating separate communities. I'm very worried
so you agree
about
with him?
What is happening in Birmingham. I'm very worried. Well, I wasn't there, so I can't say how many faces he saw. But the point is that there are many people in our country who are not integrating.
I would sort of really love to know what's meant by integrating here. I'd really like just a definition of, what counts as having integrated. Is it like, you know, a certain number of white people surrounding every residence of non-white people? Is that integration? What does it mean? What does it mean? How can you tell? It's surely racist, just straightforwardly racist to say, if I can't see a white person around, these people aren't integrated. I mean, integration there just must mean I can't see a white person around. Otherwise, what else could it mean? Without someone telling us what exactly they mean. Integration is not a matter of appearance, right? Integration is a matter of adopting customs, habits, rules, etc., etc. It's crazy stuff. Genrick has defended his comments today, saying we need to have an open and honest conversation about integration, not another one. He also told Sky News this.
And the concern I have in that community and in others across the country, 'cause it's not just about one place, that was an example because I was speaking nearby, is that we're not living in a country which is as well integrated as...
OK, you've used this word integrated as well as the one that I'm interested in.
May I just make this point, if I may? Look, there are real dangers.
Go on.
There are real dangers. If we don't live in a well-integrated community, then this can lead to serious, serious challenges. Look, just the other day here in Manchester, we saw a man who had lived in this country for 30 years, but was clearly not integrated into our society, clearly did not share British values, committing an appalling terrorist attack by going to a synagogue and killing British Jews. That is at the extreme level where failures of integration lead. And that's why we've got to have a debate about this and not have it shut down whenever anyone puts their head above the parapet and talks about it publicly.
Yes, that was Robert Jenrick using his own clearly racist comments about not seeing enough white faces to score a political point about the attack on Heaton Park Synagogue on Yom Kippur, killing one worshipper while another was shot dead by police. Barry, I can't make any sense of why the Tories engage in this kind of racist rhetoric and why they're trying to do a kind of reform. What do you make of it? What do you think they're trying to achieve? And are they going to be successful?
Well, I mean, the first thing to say is it's racism. They can go out on morning television and deny it all they want, but it's racism, and it's blunt racism. And, we've seen people for a long time talk about how they walk around London and there are no-go areas and they never see white faces, which we all know is complete absurd nonsense. And now we're seeing it come from a major political party, and we're seeing that party, defend it and call it not racist when we can all see clearly that it is. But I've been kind of fascinated by the Tory party conference, and not in a sort of a policy way or a, wow, they're having interesting conversations way, but more in a kind of a Louis Theroux, wow, this is an interesting group of people to observe way. And I think that when you contrast the Tory party conference with the Green party conference and also the Reform party conference, it's really, really stark. And I think that the contrast with the Reform party conference speaks to some of these racist statements that we've seen coming from Robert Jenrick and others. Reform at their conference had energy. There was palpable energy there. You could feel it, you could see it. The wind is at their backs, their tails are up. But, essentially they had one message, which was, an anti-immigration message, which was a stop the boats message, a message that is very, nasty and hateful, but that's very clear. Here is our prospect. Here is what we are offering. I think Jendrick, look, I've said this before. You're not going to out-reform reform. I've said it about Labour too. Jendrick is never going to out Farage. I see him as a kind of like a blunt force tool who clearly wants to be leader and is kind of scrabbling around for an issue of his own. And again, when you talk about sort of big issues and breaking through to the public. I've talked about the Reform Conference, but look at the Green Conference. Again, just this palpable sense of energy. I mean, much of it from the fact that they have a new leader in Zach Polanski, but you could feel excitement, you could feel buzz. And, then they put out this really excellent party political broadcast yesterday. And again, they had a key proposition for the public, one key proposition. And that proposition was, we're going to tax billionaires. Very, very effective. That's going to break through. What did we see the Tories speaking about the last 2 days? The European Convention on Human Rights. I mean, I know that there's that they're using that as a way to attack immigration, but it's never going to break through. I mean, do you think that you're going to walk down a high street in the UK and you're going to say to somebody, what do you want to see for Britain? What do you want to see change? And somebody is going to say, well, I really want to see us pull out of the European Convention on Human Rights. And then the other thing that they had today was that they're going to get rid of woke judges, which is just such a Trumpian idea that, again, I don't think is going to break through. I saw a clip from the conference today, or a photo, where they had outfits worn by Margaret Thatcher on sort of headless dummies encased in glass. And it was kind of macabre. And it made me think that there's like a pall of death off the entire conference. And it's the death of a political force. So, I think it's a disaster for them. And I don't think this blunt force racism is going to break through either.
I mean, I think they're lunatics, the Tories. I think they're completely insane. They've totally lost it, because, there are so many people in this country who are ethnic minorities, who are classic Tory voters, small business owners, entrepreneurs, socially conservative, all waiting there to vote for the Tories, because they're not going to vote for Reform, and they probably won't vote for Labour. But they're there, and the Tories should just be doing social conservatism, none of this race stuff, social conservatism, maybe doing some sort of stuff about, civic values or whatever if they want to, doing a little bit of tax stuff, being good for small businesses, all the stuff that Reform is going to fail to do. There's this spot for them to grow from there, to come back from there if they wanted to. But instead, they're chasing this, as you say, Trumpian, toxic, Reform, antagonistic form of politics, and they're not going to beat Reform. And when Reform gets into power, and when it all goes really, really badly wrong, which I think it will do, which I think it'll be, there'll be a one-term government, if maybe not even a full term. It depends on how things go, but they won't be able to achieve anything of the things that they're promising to achieve, not without radically changing the states in ways that most people won't tolerate. By the time that happens, so when Reform is gone, the Tories will have pegged themselves to that line of politics so much that they'll just look like continuity Reform at the end. So, yeah, no political imagination or creativity or common sense to be found at that Tory party, probably because there was hardly anybody there, to be honest. Now, of course, conference season wouldn't be complete without a roundup of young Tories being young Tories.
Dating as a Tory can be quite hard. What advice would you give to people who just want to pull?
Okay, so I've got a girlfriend now.
Excellent, well done.
When I told her I'm a young Conservative, she won't mention that to her friends at all.
I won't answer that question.
When it comes to being a Conservative online, including on dating apps, be out and proud. Don't be ashamed. Be proud of your views and your values. And if somebody else on one of these apps is so narrow-minded, they don't want to date you because you happen to be a Conservative, that's their loss.
I always say when you scratch a Reform supporter, socialist bleeds. So
we have clear policies to combat Labour. Farage is wishy-washy in terms of whether he sides with them or doesn't.
If you look at some of the policies, they're all about a bigger state. If you want someone who's actually going to take on the madness, it has to be someone like Kemi.
I've got a girlfriend now. Barry, what do you make of the young Tories? I mean, there's a way in which I kind of have to admire their loyalty. I mean, Reform must be really beckoning. You've got to wonder why they're sticking with the Tories, though, especially if they can't get laid. What's your take on them?
I'm glad cringing isn't fatal, or I would be dead in this chair right now. And it's just typical, right? We know exactly what kind of people that we're going to see when we meet young Tories. I was in a pub in central London recently, and a bunch of them came in. I overheard them say that they come from a young Tory meeting, and they were sort of very loud, and they were being incredibly rude to the bar staff, and they were sort of guffawing and hooray Henrying, and they were very sort of stereotypical. But and you get the sense that they're drawn to the party for a sort of a tribal reason, and maybe that's why they some of them don't go to reform. It's like they see the Tories as their tribe, and probably their parents voted for the Tories, and probably their grandparents voted for the Tories. And I actually think there's kind of a serious point there, which is that every time we see these clips of young Tories at conference, we've been seeing them for a long time. We've probably been seeing them for decades, and it's the same person all the time. It's like they come off an assembly line. So, what that says to me is that the Tories are not attracting a more diverse pool of young people. And again, you talk about the lack of energy in the conference. If you're not attracting a more diverse pool of young people to your cause, then you're not really future-proofing, are you?